Hello, Internet. I'm gonna do a whole bunch of stuff I don't normally do because the last couple of days have been very comic related, and I thought I'd give another kind of video a shot. So, we're rocking the wine, we're gonna relax, and if you're not up for a laid back, crazy haul video / me rambling about the Amazing Spider-Man 2, then this video isn't for you, man. So yeah. Oh, hi. So yeah, first I'm going to talk Free Comic Book Day because that's going to go faster. Then we're going to talk about the movie. First off, Free Comic Book Day, we got some of them free comics. And I actually missed picking up Future's End because there's so many at the other comic shop we went to. Went to the Beat Comic Shop for Free Comic Book Day because going to my main one for Free Comic Book Day, they have sales and everything, but you have to stand in a line that just cycles through the store and then you're out. You can't even really actually shop. And, I'm there all the time. So, all the time. I don't do anything else. But, it's good to mix it up and go spend a little money at a different shop, pick up some of the stuff that, your main shop doesn't have, in my case. But for the free comics, we got V-Wars because it had that Eastman cover, and try something new. Why not? Uber. I think my girlfriend picked it up because it's German. She's learning German, but who knows? Hopefully it's interesting. She picked up Rocket Raccoon. I got the Atomic Robo one, of course. And then I picked up the Street Fighter one, which was oversized, and I've really been getting into Street Fighter recently, and I'm thinking, maybe I should start reading some Street Fighter comics. That was actually something I was thinking about recently, and then this was just happened to be there, so I'm kind of excited, and I'm kind of hoping it loops me in to kind of get me into a different tangent of comics, and it'd be cool to start reading some stuff that has like Udon art, and I know that there's other crazy older stuff. I have a couple manga from the old Street Fighter Alpha line, and just something fun and different, So I'm kind of excited about all that, and here's hoping that it's good, man. So question one of this video for my interactive audience for this non-live video is, what free comics did you get? So then, some of the stuff I picked up, I was hoping to find more Scarlet Spider. I'm hoping to fill in the Scarlet Spider and Venom runs that ended somewhat recently, and I kind of dropped those around the time Superior happened. I kind of realized I wish I hadn't. So I'm going to go pick up these books and see what they had to offer, whatever. At Second and Charles, on top of the other free comics that most places had, they were just actually giving away free random comics. We picked out these. They gave one per person because Crazy Wildcats X-Men and whatever. And, they throw in these ads in the back, and it was just kind of funny. I found this randomly. I'm really excited to read this. I had no idea there was a Savage Dragon Martial Law crossover. That has to be insane. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's $1. What? I don't even understand. It's going to be so terrible it has to be good, right? Found a random Deadpool comic I actually didn't own. Those are few and far between. And now fewer and far between are... The way that Second Charles is working today, it was... buy 5, get 5 free, so I was at a point where I was like, I need 4 comics. Then I stumbled on this 4-issue mini. The Return of Donna Troy. I don't know much about Donna Troy, so this should be, different. I'm hoping it's somewhat enjoyable. Whatever. And then, I stumbled on some random A+X comics that were like $1 off, essentially. I figured they'd be quick, fun reads, and one of them had a cable in it, and it was just something to kind of just get for getting's sake. So that was a chunk of it. My girlfriends wanted to read this Wolverine, this is like the Wolverine mini for a while. We bought it, I forgot I had it, but it was only $2.50. It actually isn't that bad, except apparently someone wrote their credentials in the book, so I thought that was kind of funny. But it's a different printing too, like this is an older printing, so that's kind of cool. We also found this crazy long shot book out of nowhere. I assume this is from the old short-lived long shot series, and this should be a crazy little corner of stuff that is harder to find now, and a fun different character. And then I was super excited about this. I've been meaning to kind of get back to Cerebus for a while because it's just one of those things, and I own the first 4 volumes. I've only read 2. I know, only 2 volumes, but if you know Cerebus, like, that's like reading the entirety of, a new Marvel run. Whoa, actually, I take that back, like, double that. And better in most cases, obviously. But I got a whole nother chunk of Cerebus, and this takes me through a good chunk, and all these were half off. So, together it's setting me back a little bit, but, I mean, a volume of Cerebus for this one was $3. $3 for the Flight volume is just, that's insane. So I was super stoked to pick these out. So there was that. And then there was the main event. This is actually more my girlfriend's stuff, but we're going to read it together, and I'm super excited. We got Excalibur! And there's Excalibur Volume 2, and New Excalibur. But we got the entirety of the first volume of Excalibur with all of its annuals. This was all bundled together, all at once, and with the discount that they had going on and everything, it was less than $1 an issue. It was a pretty cool, crazy find, and I'm super excited about it. So we have a lot to go through. There's a little more than 123 issues, and then 6 annual, like, basically 125 comics, give or take. Crazy. It was just super exciting, so that's going to be a thing. There you go. Alright, and the last part of the haul is actually something I want to talk about, because it's a corner of nerdom that I haven't explored or touched in a long time, but it really took me back, and it took me back pre-internet, so pre all this shit, and just something different, to kind of remember where this all started in a way. But some of it was, there's just these crazy cards, and I never much collected DC before, but there's this set. This is like 175 for the commons, but I don't care about the whatevers. This is a old school DC card set. The first chunk has like Golden Age, Silver Age, and then Modern Age starts off with Blue Beetle. There's like Flash and da-da-da-da-da. These are all cards printed in 91. A focus on Booster Gold and stuff. What's crazy is there is this entire set, which is a whole lot of crazy cards that goes in Chronicles. Kind of really goes through a lot of what was bigger at DC at the time in 91. And there's also this entire set, which is more of a Justice League set, and is more about doing things in threes. So, like, later they have this crazy Guy Gardner card I like. A lot of them are sets of threes to start that were printed in 93. So in the early 90s era. And it's all these DC cards that go through the various stuff of what's going on, and there's a lot of focus on the Legion and the whatever incarnation of the Justice League then, and a lot of crazy costumes I don't even remember, because I'm sure they were only around, like, within those years. There is no Batman or Joker or anything Batman related, really, in any of those two card sets, which was crazy. The closest you get is there is a card that has the Royal Flush Gang when they fought the Justice League, and apparently someone gave them extraterrestrial weapons, which made them a lot tougher to beat. And something finally made sense to me because of the way it was arranged. Ace, King, Queen, 10. I never understood 10. I was like, why the fuck name 10? Like, 10 wrote a random card. It's the next card under the named cards. And I was like, oh. What a terrible name. I don't know why that never clicked before. It's so obvious, but just I needed the order, like a poker list. Oh, okay. She's the least valuable member of the group. Sucker. But the sexiest, apparently, according to the 90s. Especially compared to the Queen. It's the 90s, man. What you gonna do? But what really took me back was seeing this on the shelf that prompted me buying all these cards, which were not a lot of money. But this card in particular, I remember this. I've always loved Cyclops, but this is one of the first times I understood what was going on. When I was getting to know comics, I liked Ninja Turtles, Spider-Man, and X-Men. And X-Men were hot in 94. Hot, mostly because of the cartoon, but also at the time in Marvel, you know, there were the Spider-Man books, there was whatever Avengers and West Coast going on, but I didn't know that at the time. But there was X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, Excalibur. Like, it was, if it didn't have an X on it, Marvel wasn't pushing it that hard, it didn't seem. Because it was extreme 90s. So, this card was one that I wanted for a long time. Didn't take too long to come by, because, you know, common, and it's the #1 card of the set. But this 94 Fleer Ultra X-Men set was all about the X-Books. And I loved these cards for a lot of reasons. First of all, the art on that is damn cool. But what really got me into collecting these cards for a while was the back. And this may not mean much to you guys now, but on the back they have this weird little like Tron scan of the front art, and then a description of the character, and then their group affiliations. Oddly not a first appearance, which is usually the kind of information they put on these cards. But what was on here is their special abilities, their mutant powers, whatever that may be. And optic blasts, beams of concussive force fired from the eyes. At the time, I had to look up what concussive meant, but it taught me that Cyclops' beams were not heat rays. They were force coming from his eyes. That blew my mind as a kid, because I just figured it was heat rays because it was red. And a lot of people do assume that about him, especially because I think sometimes they write it like that, which is weird. It also taught me what concussive meant. That's just one of those, by learning to read and doing that, you start coming across new words and you grow. So, but I mean, there's tons of characters that I was trying to collect these cards, and I was looking for certain cards for a long time. They weren't necessarily hard to find, but there were some really big ones. Getting the Bishop card and the Cable card, I remember, were a really big deal. And what I kind of assumed Cable's power was something where he could project energy, but he needed the gun to focus it and put that energy out. That's what I assumed Cable's power was for the longest time, because he's just a gun-toting maniac, or rather was in the 90s. But I found out later through these cards he has telekinetic abilities. Who fucking knew? Does he ever use those? Like, not really, because he had gun-itis. But there's just a lot of crazy art on these cards. I've not seen that one till today. Probably good for my adolescent young mind. But reclaiming these cards and finding them is kind of a big thing. I'm not usually big on going back and buying pieces of my nostalgia, but these cards were part of what got me into comics. For a while, I was saving up to buy packs of these cards instead of buying comics, because I kind of needed the information that I could get from them about the characters and whatnot, so I could understand what was going on when I picked up an X-Men comic. And because of that, I was actually more scared to buy X-Factor, X-Force, or any of that, because I didn't know the characters, and I didn't know the powers, and I didn't know what was going on. And so that kind of held me back. And eventually, through these cards, I became more familiar with the characters, and of course I was more interested in the X-Men. And I found it kind of frustrating, because there's this whole big thing about Wolverine in here, and there's a whole set of Wolverine's greatest battles. But it's all Wolverine. And I've never been big on Wolverine. The one I did want, though, because it's the only card in here with him, was Wolverine versus Spider-Man, which is going to serve as our segue into the second avenue, which is me telling you about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 motion picture and my debut impressions. Woo! Alright, true believers, let's get into this, and don't you worry, I just got some different wine, so I'm good to go. Alright, so The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie, in my opinion. Now, woohoo, it's not like the greatest movie or anything. It is the best superhero movie to come out in recent memory, and for a lot of reasons. Now, the opening scene post Spider-Man 2 credits, because they have some bullshit with his parents to start off that plays in later, kind of. It's a fun, energetic scene, and when watching it, I was thinking, wow, this is like the first time that it's really felt like Spider-Man on film. Just the quips were right, the energy was there, they were playing with his abilities in a fun, different way that really worked on film. That scene would not work as well in a comic. It was just fun. The damage level was a little overblown, but it was fun to watch. It was cool. And then you just get into the frickin' soap drama of him and Gwen and how they're playing that, which is weird, because, I mean, it's Gwen, but it's not Gwen at all from the comics. It's this movie's Gwen, and it's also weird because, okay, so the biggest difference about these movies from any other interpretation of Spider-Man is this Eurocentric idea of destiny. So Spider-Man is in this dynasty, sort of this problem that he's dealing with, that is using animals and biotechnology to evolve humans to another level through Oscorp. And so everything in this movie circles around Oscorp. His parents worked for Oscorp. There's a play with To His Powers and his parents being part of that. It's as close as I can say without giving it away, which is pretty much in the first movie if you're paying attention. They bring in Harry Osborn. That plays up in all the ways you'd expect it would, being a comic fan. And then they bring in Electro. And that is around Oscorp as well. He worked for Oscorp. Everything he does centers around Oscorp. It's there. And so the only part of this movie that does not center around Oscorp is Peter Parker's relationship with Gwen Stacy, which is haunted by Dennis Leary ghost giving Peter the willies because he said, "Stay away from my daughter, even from the grave." And so that fuels some of the movie, and there's all the soap drama that you need, all the quip, all the stuff about Peter Parker needing to overcome and doing stuff is there. And I don't want to delve into spoiler territory, so I'm only going to... If you haven't seen it, this is not spoiling, this is just saying... If you've seen the trailer, this isn't spoiling dick. Electro is played by Jamie Foxx. He is a black man. I'm saying that because I've seen some critics complain about the fact that apparently there's no plans for a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie, which is fucking weird. People are saying, oh, well, race is... they just want white heroes. I'm like, look, they changed this character to black. Does that not count for anything? I know he's the villain, and he becomes blue, but... it's Marvel, that happens. I don't know. Why would you want a Miles Morales movie? I don't know. It just seems weird. I'm not saying that would be bad. It's just, I don't think there's any superhero that's more tied to the alternate identity or whatever, or however you want to view that. Peter Parker and Spider-Man working as a dynamic is much more important than pretty much any other superhero in their alternate identity. Like, I think you could make a Black Flash and not much changes. But if you make Peter Parker black, he lives in New York, you almost have to put him in Harlem. That, like, it changes things a lot more. Even making Daredevil black makes a lot more sense, because then he's colorblind too. Bad idea. PC people would be mad. Which is kind of weird. So what I wanted to say about Electro that is where he starts. Where he starts is a black man. Whatever. Who cares? Jamie Foxx is a good actor. That's why that happened with that role, is because they got Jamie Foxx, who's a good actor, apparently. I didn't know. Then I saw this movie and I knew. He starts as an electrical engineer that works for Oscorp, and then an accident happens that involves electric eels. And he gets the powers. Now, why is that important? It's not super important, but the idea of tying Electro to the animal motif is really interesting, because it takes one of the kind of outlier Spider-Man villains and ties it back to what it's all about. And what makes it really important is this movie is all about this idea. Utilizing animals and infusing that into people to create these... God, it's like this natural, like, biochemical step, and it kind of... I don't want to say it makes it realistic, but it makes everything a bit more tangible, and it creates an interesting idea, because suddenly it's all DNA splicing, and there's all a logic working with everything. To a point. The powers go kind of crazy, whatever. The way that they play and do some things with Electro, I'm just going to say, are amazing and work great on film. Also, throughout this film, you're going to notice a lot of quick shots, visual setups, pulls and scenes that show that they're having fun making this movie. They cared. It wasn't just getting from one scene to the next. Like, there's actually some film behind this. And it's not just a movie. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, this is Spider-Man 2. It is just a movie. But as opposed to all the other, to the Marvel Studio films, this had a little bit more love and care put into it. And a lot more love and care than the first one of this Spider-Man thrust. So, the one big thing I want to do is, a lot of you might have encountered various criticisms, and I've seen MovieBob, Comics Alliance, and Red Eye Geek from Chicago all pretty much slam this movie. I've seen a couple other things online. Critics seem to just hate this movie with a passion. I mean, not just dismissive, like, oh, it's a bad superhero movie. No. Like, it's bad, or the weirdest one was Comics Line saying it's not as good as Spider-Man 2 from the Sam Raimi trilogy, which is... If you like that other Spider-Man 2 better, fair enough. Up until now, I think that was the best Spider-Man movie. I think this one's a little bit better. But that's literally just comparative opinion that hardly means anything. But what I have a problem with is people calling this a bad superhero movie. And of course, the obvious comparison, because it just came out, was The Winter Soldier. This is a much better superhero movie, and much better movie than The Winter Soldier. Here's why. If you like The Winter Soldier, I get where you're coming from. It was pretty decent. What kills me is The Winter Soldier has nothing to do with The Winter Soldier. They don't talk about the connection of The Winter Soldier to Russia. And really, I mean, they mention it, but they don't talk about it. And therefore, they're not talking about the theme that moves from the hatred of America from World War II to the Cold War to the present day. And then with terrorism, which is what was informing the entire Brubaker run with the onset of 9/11, and then that. If you don't talk about why people hate America and why there's a common thread there and why there's a sense to that, you lose a lot of what informs that and that story and that character. And you're doing that because you're afraid general audiences can't handle it, can't take it, don't want to hear it, whatever. That's stupid. That's like undermining the entire point of the movie because you're afraid of people actually walking away with a thought in their head. Which is scary to me, actually, because when you start realizing the level of production, the number of people behind it, all those factors... When you put that all in, you realize when you do that all just for a popcorn movie, that's kind of scary that amount of human effort and GDP, essentially, was pushed forth for something to just be a movie. That's kind of scary. And I'm not saying The Amazing Spider-Man has any grand message, but there is something about hope, there is something about overcoming, and one thing that drives me nuts that every criticism talks about is they mention that, like, Electro isn't a super well set up villain. No, he's set up just enough for it to be perfect, because this is already a 2.5 hour movie. You need to move everything along as fast as possible, and there are pacing problems with it. So when they do some pacing essentially correctly, I find it weird that people criticize that. The Electro villain is set up to where there's something sympathetic, there's something talking about not being noticed by the person who's working hard and overlooked and just that sort of thing. That's really sympathetic and something we've all had something to, and then it kind of gets twisted. And then you realize it's a situation not too far off from Spider-Man's, the way that they play it in this movie, which isn't too much to how the comic book Electro was set up. Similar, but different. And then it's Electro. So it's not subtle when they're talking about metaphors of power. And there's the misuse, management, and then because of the way he's set up, the kind of delineation of power. And it's talking about all those throughout the movie. And if you're not getting that, I kind of wonder if you're not conscious while watching this. And it really... It does also kind of scare me that these supposed great critics, these people who are men of modern day storytelling, or just generally well-known supposed critics that are supposed to be film buffs and understand how all this interplays works, can't understand when a movie is cracking a metaphor over their head. Like I said, it's Electro. The idea of him having and using power is not subtle at all. And for them to not get that and not understand that that immediately reflects into how Spider-Man responds to and deals with that is kind of sad. Honestly, if you're not getting that. And I'm not trying to say that if you watched and you didn't get... I mean, it's whatever. But when someone who's a supposed critic and this is their job to get this stuff and they're not getting that's when it scares me. So there you go on that. I think this is a great movie, and I do think it has some things to say, not the grandest message, but I think there's some there, and there's definitely a lot of heart to this movie. And for that, I think it's better than any Marvel Productions movie, which is just trying to sell you from one thing to the next. And it's not that they're terrible movies, it's that there's not much more than the base plot line in any of them. And so that's why I put it above those. That's my reasoning. If you don't agree, I understand. I just don't give a shit about the Avengers because there's nothing going on, basically. Yeah, there you go. Also, I put something to that effect of my movie ramble on Facebook in textual form. And a friend of mine from not Comic World, he's more video games and animus and whatever, he responded to my bit talking about, well, no, the movie was dumb and the characters weren't there and da-da-da. But he talked about the fact that he didn't like it as much because he didn't feel certain things were set up, which I thought were, that I can't talk about without spoiling it. But he was talking about, well, it's just not... Spider-Man needs to be in a serial form, and then I got to the point where I was saying, well, okay, you're blaming this movie for essentially being a movie. That's ridiculous. But what he brought up, because when I started off, my first line of my Spider-Man thing was, as someone who is probably the biggest Spider-Man fan in your Facebook feed, which, for most of the people on my Facebook feed, that is a very apt statement. He took offense because Spider-Man's one of his favorite heroes, and he happened to actually watch through an entire cartoon that I could not. The Spectacular Spider-Man, which is a very high school-y based Spider-Man, which already irks me, but then the animation style is just bad. Well, that's not fair. The animation's decent, better than the 90s Spider-Man cartoon that I grew up with, but the character designs are very minimalistic and just kind of rob anything of having any emotion or anything, because it's too cartoony and too dumbed down. It's almost like exaggerated stick figures punching each other. You just don't care. So, But he talked about how the characters were set up and that how Harry and Spider-Man had more of a connection there than they did in the movie. Well, no, it's a serial telling. But it just kind of, I found it weird, and I don't know if any of you guys have encountered this, where you're talking about something and you kind of take ownership of it because you live in this world. You're reading comics all the time. You're thinking about these characters. You're kind of playing out and finding other things with it because you're just with this so much. And then other people who like it, and this has happened to me with Spider-Man more than any other character, like, no, I like Spider-Man too. You don't need to be all... And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm a bigger Spider-Man fan because I could kill you if I dropped my entire Spider-Man collection on you at once. Like, you would not survive. It's too much weight. Like, I get a new Spider-Man comic all the time. Like, I'm constantly caring and dealing with the character and interested in the interpretations and how it goes. Like, I'm not trying to say other people can't be Spider-Man fans. I don't know, maybe I just need to word it differently. I don't know if any of you guys have run into that. So, just random neuroses stuff. Anyways, I have to go film 2 contest videos, so those will be on my channel too. Check those out if you want. If you watched this, that's a weird statement. And I will make a better video soon, but not too soon. Good night, good people.